Hello, Eric Greenwater here. Well, I'm gonna get right into it. What I want to talk about today is children and the raising of children. And I'm the father of a young child. My second child will be here in less than a couple months, so very soon. So I'm the father of young children, right? And so maybe in a number of years I'll have more insight and more practical experience. But I have a toddler, a 3-year-old going on 4. And so with that, I do know a little bit. But even before that, me and my wife, we cultivated and developed our own philosophy and vision for parenting, and much of it was what was passed down. Hopefully I can give you a vision that I think is a biblical vision, I think is an ancient, tried and true vision for parenting, or what is developing into one. And I'll give you that first, and then I'll make comments on other thoughts. We'll say that on parenting. Well, what I want to start with, last week I pulled this out, Khalil Gibran, the prophet. I want to read you another poem. And the woman who held a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." And he said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." And that's a capital L, life. Though they come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer seeks the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrows that fly, so he loves also the bow that is stable. And it has this picture that the author illustrated of a large man, and it has a bow that's made up of persons. And so that's the image I like of parenting in relationship with God. Right? Psalm 127, that children are a blessing, and they're like arrows in the quiver of a warrior. ultimately, my children are not mine. They're themselves, but they belong to God. They belong to the Father. They are great gifts to me, but I am a steward that I need to be let God move through me. Yes, I love them like nothing I've ever loved before. But I don't love them like God does. My love for them is just but a measure of God's love for me and for them. But that picture of a family, of a husband and wife, right? Together, they're like the arms of the bow. And their union is the handle. And the child is the arrow. And the archer, which is God, draws it back. And an archer, he draws the edge of the arrow right to his eye, so that the arrow is lined up with his vision, with the archer's vision. And no one can aim like God. So I'm not even the archer. My wife's not the archer. We're the bow. And there's a stability in our union, but there's also needs to be a humility. We need to be bent by the Lord. Bent. And our children are in His hands. And I want His aim, His vision, right, to aim them. Now, part of that is practical. I need to get a vision to pass on to them, but I don't want it to just be my own thoughts. I want to be used to sow seeds into them and to cultivate life in them, that they might be supple and surrendered to the Lord's aiming. And then someday they will become the bow, part of the bow, right? Not a one-sided bow, a two-sided bow, right? What would a bow be if it was just one side? It wouldn't go hard enough and fast enough. It wouldn't meet its mark. You need both sides of the bow. And so parenting is with two parents, male and female, right? Because you need masculine and feminine in the home and in your life. I need to pursue the feminine and awaken the feminine in my spouse and in my little girl. And she can't give it to me, as I've said before, but I want my wife to stir up masculinity in me. Give me reason to be masculine, to be a husband and a father. And those things together, the beautiful dance of marriage and life and family, the Lord uses. But within that as well, and this is obviously, people may know where this is going, this all requires discipline of self and discipline in the home. It's a must. There's a part of a vision that's cultivating joy and gladness and having food on the table and spending time together and praying together and those things. But in the raising of a child, you must raise them in the way they should go so that they may not depart from it. And the hard part is that they may not receive the lesson. They may go astray of their own volition and free will, and it would be sad. But I've seen it happen. I know it's possible. I pray against it. But we live in a culture that hates discipline. Hates it. And we have come up with these ways of raising kids that's undisciplined, and we raise them to hate discipline, and what it creates is aimlessness and a lack of identity. And it's in reaction to maybe a culture that was too disciplined in one way, but it's an overreaction. It's like a lot of things. Feminism, it's an overreaction. There's a reason it's there. If you don't understand that, you don't know why we got here. All right? But should we throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak? Should we throw out all those things? This has worked for all time, that you should discipline your children. Right? What does Hebrews say? Hebrews 12, starting in verse 3. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we have earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time, as it seemed best to them, but he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Therefore lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that that which is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. Strive for peace with everyone, and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. And it goes on. Verse 11. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. And so to all these philosophies that don't want to discipline their children, what are you doing? How is this loving? How is this not selfish? You want to be friends with your babies, your little kids? Yeah, be friendly with them, but you're not their friend. You're their parent. You have a responsibility. How is it loving them and seeking their best to try to get fulfillment from them? You're trying to get fulfillment from a little child? You're trying to get identity from them? What are you, a selfish little kid? That's how kids act with each other. No, be a grown-up, be an adult. Right? You got to feed them and feed yourself. They don't know how to live. But what we're seeing is this lack of discipline in the culture, and this hate for discipline is grown adults. They're grown in body, but not in mind. They're acting like little toddlers. It's children raising children. It's blind leading the blind. But you can be old school and have old school discipline without being a jerk. Right? The problem is we're reacting to the jerks, and there's going to be jerks. There's going to be people that do it wrong. And so just to get into it, some of these things, whatever, Dr. Spock and this different stuff, there's these statistics on, corporal punishment. And children, the whole thing. Do you spank or not spank your kids? And so here's I'll set forth the argument against spanking is there's all these statistics about children raised with corporal punishment. But here's the deceptive part. Look into these studies. So there's the children that don't get spanked and the children that do get spanked. But the children that do get spanked, there's no distinction in that group, in that study, between the ones who were spanked yet also deeply loved and deeply comforted and cherished. The ones that they received discipline and a hug. They received discipline, harsh words that broke off unrighteousness, that broke off wrongdoings, yet also received words of affirmation and love and a building up. They commingled them, that same group, with those that were abused. Are there people that are abused? Absolutely. But if your numbers are mixed, when you have those that are abused with no distinction with those that also spank but don't abuse their children, what's that going to look like? That's going to look like all going to look like child abuse. It skews the numbers, and it paints a picture that is false. It is a lie, and it is deceptive, and it is wicked. It is wickedness, and it is not loving. This mamby-pamby way of, I don't spank my child, I don't lift my hand to my child. It is wickedness. The Bible does say, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And it's not just one verse taken out of context. That is what it says, and that is what it means. Discipline is for a short time. They're simple little creatures that don't understand words yet. They can't think for themselves fully yet. But their little bodies can take a light amount of punishment, a light amount, a light strike that sets them in the right direction. I do spank my daughter. I don't have to beat her to death to do it. I don't have to bruise her to get her to do what I say. Many times it's a little pat. It's not even painful, but she feels the shame of she doesn't know how to express it, but she knows she did the wrong thing. And it's just a little. Sometimes it's all it takes is just this little, pat on her backside, and her heart is moved, and she comes near, and I hold her, and she cries, and it's painful, and I don't enjoy it. But the result is I do it less and less. Right? She obeys me, and she enjoys me, and she's learning that I am seeking her best, and if she obeys me, I'm out for her good. I'm not against her. I'm not for myself in this relationship. And she knows that she is loved, and she learns the boundaries. And so there's a tension, there's a balance. I can't have high expectations for my toddler. I have to create and cultivate those expectations. And she learns those, and I'm helping her. Eventually she will build her own vision for her life and her own wants and desires. And someone's going to raise your kids. Kids don't raise themselves. That is a lie. There's some of that in the culture. Let them figure it out for themselves. You don't teach them. Something's going to teach them. Somebody other than you will teach them. If they don't get a vision and boundaries from you, they'll find them from someone else. And it may not be to your liking. It may be far beyond it. And then years later, you don't understand why they left the faith and they left you behind. Now I say that because I was disciplined as a child, but I was not abused. And I'm still good friends with my parents. Same goes for my wife and her parents. It may seem harsh to some, but that's God. God's not a teddy bear. He's not, rainbow hippie Jesus is not the Jesus of the Bible. He is holy. I lean into the Lord because I fear the Lord. I have a righteous fear like I had for my father. Like I had for my dad and my mom on earth. I didn't want to violate what they said. I wanted to please them because I knew that I understood that they were right. And obviously there were times I didn't enjoy it. Even as a teenager, I didn't enjoy things. But I look back and I'm glad. Man, I'm glad. Holy moly, they saved me from so much headaches. And I enjoy my life. My life is so full of joy and happiness. And I am jealous of no one. I really am not. I enjoy my life because I was a disciplined son. I felt love. I lived in love. But all these philosophies that are new, these are totally new. These are 2 seconds ago. It's from the 60s. And that was a debacle. And I heard it said the 70s was the hangover. It was all a debacle. And we're in this increasing debacle. And all the craziness that we are seeing is because of a lack of discipline and a lack of love. It's both and. It is abusive to beat your child and never love them. Absolutely. But it is emotionally abusive to give them no discipline. It is not love, that is selfishness. And it is in the church as well. And the reason it's in the church is because it is a reflection, it is a symptom of a brokenness that we have and a lack of discipline. We want all the ooey gooey, lovey-dovey, soft love and mercy of the Lord. We want all His mercy and forgiveness, but none of the cross. We are rebellious children. But I don't want that for my children or for my life. And me and my kids, we're going to have a lot of fun. Like me and my parents, we had a lot of fun. I enjoyed my parents so much, even as a child. And they would whoop me, and I deserved it. I look back like I earned my whoopings. I earned them. I earned my spankings. Absolutely. They were not unrighteous in doing it. They were righteous, and it worked unrighteous out of me, and I quit getting spanked. Partly because it didn't hurt anymore. They couldn't really hurt me. I was bigger than them. But also because I didn't want to do it, and I didn't have to be disciplined so often. I rarely received discipline as it became an older teenager because I didn't need it. Because I was a young adult, a young man, and I walked as a man, and I talked as a man. And it was great, and great childhood. So all these visions of, or if you spank your kids, you're robbing them of something. No, you're robbing them of something if you don't give them boundaries and discipline. Yes, abuse is wrong. Duh. We all can agree on that. Right? That is reflection and a symptom of a brokenness in the parent. But a parent who doesn't give discipline to their children, and that's not always just spanking. Sometimes there's different ways. But the gentle parenting model, no. I think it works when they're infants. But as they grow, they need discipline. They need it. Now the biggest thing is you and your wife need to do it together. You need to figure out what it is together. But I do not believe in this no spanking thing. There is the rare child that it might work for. It's a rare child that has that temperament, and that's fine. But overall, if that's the culture, it will lead to what we have now. Part of the ills of our culture is a lack of discipline. And part of the ills we have in the church is because spiritually we have no discipline. We get mad and we go and we leave and we huff and we puff and we have tantrums like toddlers because we have a crossless gospel. We have no discipline. We lack discipline in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds. And parenting, we don't have a good vision for our children. And you can't, if you need to receive the discipline of the Lord over your life. You need to be bent. Right? You need to let Him bend you so that the arrows of your children can fly true. You need to be gripped by the Lord and be bent by the Lord so that those children can hit the mark. That's my vision for parenting. I get emotional about it because I see it. And it's not my place to go around browbeating everyone that I don't think raise their kids right. And I'm not talking about the kid that acts up sometimes. I mean, obviously things happen. But when we went out in public as a kid, we didn't act out. My daughter doesn't act out. She's a sweetheart when we're out in public. When people see her, she's so sweet. Yeah, because we discipline in the home. She learns to obey. She knows it'll go better. She doesn't do it perfectly, but she wants to. It's already, the desire is there. And it takes time. It's little bit by little bit. At some point, my kids are going to be totally on their own, and I want them to stand on their own 2 feet and to know who they are and to know their God and to live their life. But if I don't give them discipline now, they won't be able to make it. Or they won't have a better shot. I mean, obviously the Lord can do things. But we need to retrieve a crucified life, both in our own hearts, as parents and as adults, and we need to in measure work that out in our children so that they may live life to the fullest and know what life is and know who they are and know that they are loved discipline comes out of love, not out of anger. The old school works the best because it always has. If you love your children, you need to discipline your children. You need to encourage them and build them up, but you also need to prune them so that they grow strong and bear fruit in life. That's what I had to say on the subject. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May He give you His